What's going on, bottom line viewers? It's Mitch here, live for your Super Bowl 56, aka Super Bowl LVI. Super Bowl 56. The Roman numerals, throw it out, bro. It's Super Bowl 56. It's the Los Angeles Rams. It's the Cincinnati Bengals. Joe Burrow versus Matthew Stafford. A former Sean McVay disciple, Zach Taylor, taking on his teacher. It's kind of a teacher versus protege matchup in the Super Bowl. And it's a Super Bowl where not a lot of people expected this to be the matchup in September or in last March for sure. And even, let's say, at the beginning of the playoffs, I do not know many people, if any, that picked the Rams and the Bengals to be headlining the biggest game in the NFL, that is the Super Bowl. But here we are, and we have two teams that I think are very likable, two teams that are very easy to root for. They've both had incredible journeys. There are some very good human storylines in this game, and I'm going to break down this game from those storylines, but also, you guys know, from an X's and O's, from a both sides of the football perspective, and give you my truth for who is going to win this game, where I'm placing my money on this game in terms of who am I betting on in this game, because it is the Super Bowl. Let's be fair, let's be honest. There will be money on this game. There's no doubt. It is Super Bowl 56. I can't go without it. So, this is your Super Bowl 56 preview. Before I give you my in-depth breakdown of this year's Super Bowl, make sure that you do spike that like button. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more BLV just like this. Also, Gronk, spike that notification bell to be notified when I go live. I do want to give you guys a heads up. Please go check out the rest of my Super Bowl content. It might get lost out there. I'm not sure why, but YouTube hasn't exactly been friendly to me the last couple of days. Maybe because I didn't post for about 5 or 6 days. But make sure to check those videos out if you haven't already. I've already put out a couple videos in regards to the Super Bowl. I put one out actually earlier today, which was who is better, the Los Angeles Rams or the Cincinnati Bengals, looking at both rosters and going position group by position group to tell you which roster and which depth chart and which position I like more on either team. So go check that out. That's definitely a very, very interesting video, you know, a different look at the game, and I feel like some interesting results there. Shout out to Dilly Vanilli Dylan Via out there, who came up with that concept many years back. I've brought it back for the Super Bowl, so shout out to him. That was his idea, so I got to give him credit for it. But this is your Super Bowl 56 preview. Let's get to it, guys. Make sure to Grog spike that like button, and let's roll. So, the Super Bowl line. Also, it is Rams -4, but you guys might be looking at this thing and saying, whoa, what type of logo is that? Bro, that is the BLV Super Bowl logo, and that is brought to you by the legend himself, the OG himself. His name is Lenny B. He created that BLV nice little logo that I have there on the scoreboard, or whatever you'll call it, the lower third. So shout out to Lenny for creating that Super Bowl logo for Super Bowl BLV. So appreciate you for that, Lenny. Okay, so the line is 4. The Rams are the favorite in this Super Bowl, and they deserve to be the favorite in this Super Bowl. They are the team that before the season was looked at as a Super Bowl contender. It lost quite a bit of steam, especially when Cam Akers got hurt and when Robert Woods went down in the middle of the season. But some things have happened since then, right? They added Von Miller. They added Odell Beckham Jr., who might have been the biggest addition to any team throughout this season, where you lose a Robert Woods without that number 2 receiver replacement of Odell Beckham Jr. The Rams aren't here today. They probably get eliminated by the Bucs. So that being said, absolutely huge addition. But the Rams from the very beginning of the season were looked at as one of the few teams that could go in and win the Super Bowl because they went all in this season to get Matthew Stafford. They went all in and they pushed the chips in the middle of the table. They said, this is our guy. This is the quarterback that's going to do it for us. He's a perfect fit for what we want to do. Sean McVay needed to unlock and unload his mind in terms of his offense and his offensive scheme. He felt Jared Goff wasn't getting it done. And remember, this move was actually made last season. We were talking about last year's Chiefs-Bucks Super Bowl when that was going down. So this was a year in advance, a year process that has gotten the Rams here, really. And multiple years in trading for guys like Jalen Ramsey and surrounding Aaron Donald and surrounding this roster with all the pieces. Cooper Kupp's development has been a massive storyline throughout the year, having a legendary season where he finished second in receiving yards. On the flip side, you look at the Bengals, and the Bengals are a team that nobody expected to be here. I don't even think Bengals fans expected to be here, to be honest with you. And it's funny because all Bengals fans, the way that they comment on my channel, you would think that they knew this team was going to go to the Super Bowl, because it's funny how none of them said it when I made my record prediction back in March or in August or whenever I made that video. But now all of a sudden, people are just commenting that I'm a dumbass because I didn't put the Bengals in the Super Bowl. That's funny how that works, you know, because the Bengals fans themselves didn't even pick them to win the division or pick them to go to the Super Bowl. So, you know, it is what it is. But I'm on to you, Bengals fans. Don't think I'm not on to you. But the Bengals are here, and they've done it thanks to the leadership and the play of Joe Burrow, who was in the discussion for the MVP. I think a lot of people would put him third on that list behind Brady and Rodgers for the regular season. He graded very highly this season. He's taken a massive step in year 2. Jamar Chase has been the big cog in terms of developing Joe Burrow and developing this team and their identity, which is their quarterback, their passing game, their receivers, their offense, their explosive ability, which they were the most explosive offense this season. And defensively, they're very well schooled. They're very smart. We're going to talk a lot about their defense in this video, but the storylines are there. I think the big one for me, personally, for the Rams is, can Sean McVay redeem himself from last Super Bowl? Because remember last Super Bowl when they played the New England Patriots, that was probably one of the most convincing 13-3 games I've ever seen. I haven't seen many 13-3 games, but you kind of know what I mean. It felt like New England just had the Rams number and had a grasp on that game and were choking the Rams and choking the life out of the Rams. And Sean McVay, throughout that game, got thoroughly out-coached, got thoroughly out-prepared by Bill Belichick, Brian Flores, and company. And really, if it was not for Wade Phillips and Wade Phillips' defense, they probably don't even belong in that game. So Sean McVay was not very good. I think Sean McVay got away last week with taking all his timeouts in the early fourth quarter. He's going to have to be better in terms of time management in this game, most likely, in order to win. Now, it could be a blowout, and you won't need to do that, but we'll see if that develops into a late-game situation. We'll see how he looks in that situation, and if he can handle the pressure, because, again, the first time he was in the Super Bowl, he didn't handle the pressure. It didn't go well. So will he be able to bounce back from that is a massive storyline, both from a scheme perspective, a coaching perspective, a preparation perspective, but also an in-game perspective. So there's that. On the other side, you have the Bengals, who Joe Burrow and his swagger and just the whole mystique around this football team right now has a lot of public bettors and a lot of people that are interested in voting on this game and picking this game are going to pick the Bengals and are going to bet on the Bengals because they feel that Joe Burrow it's his destiny to win, and they just want to back Joe Burrow. And that can be a mistake because you're just simply backing one player instead of a team. But that seems to be the narrative right now for Cincinnati and why so many people are betting on Cincinnati in this game. On top of that, the Bengals are playing with house money. Again, they weren't supposed to be here. So that means that they probably feel like we're the underdogs. No one thinks we can win. We're going to go out there. We're going to have fun. We're going to put on a show, and we're going to go out and win this game, just as they have in every other playoff game they've played throughout the playoffs. Nobody thought they would beat the Titans. Nobody thought they would beat the Chiefs. Every time they have rose to the occasion, they have won in surprising, but also they belong here. They've beat the best teams in their path, and they belong in this Super Bowl. And then the one final storyline that I really am invested in is the Matthew Stafford storyline of he was always looked at, always doubted, always called a loser, not a winner. He's not a guy that can win you a Super Bowl. Sean McVay now has that quarterback that he can trust in this situation. Will he put the game in his right arm to win it? And I believe Stafford has been the difference for the Rams this year in every big game versus the Niners, versus the Bucks in the playoffs so far, and even the Cardinals. He has been absolutely money. So will he once again rise to the occasion and finish and win his first Super Bowl, the first Super Bowl? And quite frankly, this is the first playoff run he's ever had in his career. So we will see if Stafford can achieve that. Guys, if you haven't already, make sure you do Gronk spike that like button. Share this with everybody. Share this with all your football fans. Let them see the bottom line view. All right, let's roll to the next. And that is the offense. So the similarities in the offense, I think, is something that not a lot of casual football fans will be very key on, but it is something I think for you guys to pay attention to. If you are interested in the X's and O's of football, you will see two offenses that look very similar, and that is because they both come from the same tree, mostly, the Mike Shanahan tree, and that is Sean McVay's offense that has been carried to Cincinnati, and they both do similar things on the run game side of things. They run inside and outside zones, and they don't really run a ton of different variety within their running game, but that is pretty much their staples. And then you have a passing offense, and the one big similarity that I could find was the rate at which they ran empty backfields. So the rate that they run 5 receivers and have their quarterback in an empty formation. And 18% of the time the Rams use an empty formation. The Bengals have been a team that have used that in their most successful games 14% of the time, which is actually second in the NFL behind only the Rams. So these two teams lead the NFL in empty formation usage. Now, I have found that the Rams do a better job of defending that formation than the Bengals do, but that's something that you could possibly watch. Now, let's get to one side of the ball, which is the Bengals defense versus the Rams offense. The Bengals defense is kind of built with a no-holes approach in terms of their roster construction and the way that their defense just looks and feels. So the Bengals are a defense that doesn't have a lot of stars. I bet you that a lot of casual football fans could not name a single player on the Bengals defense. And if they can, it's maybe 1, maybe 2 at the most. They might know Trey Hendrickson, and that's probably about it. I would be surprised if they knew anybody else. But the Bengals defense is a unit that is very, very well spread out in terms of their talent. They don't really have any bad starters on their defense. They're not really weak in any particular area, which means that there aren't any areas that an offense can necessarily attack. But that also means that there aren't a lot of areas where the Bengals defense will dictate to an opposing offense. It's not like they have a dreaded pass rush where you've got to double team a certain guy or you've got to be able to get rid of the ball quickly, kind of like the Rams are. You don't really have to steer away from a number 1 shutdown corner. You don't have to be aware of a free safety that's all over the field and making plays on the football, or a linebacker that just constantly gets his hands on the football. This isn't a defense with a ton of stars, but they don't have many holes. They don't have many weaknesses, which I do appreciate. I think that there's a unit that is very well coached, and they kind of build themselves from week to week and structure themselves from week to week depending on what they play, depending on the offense they play. We've seen this throughout the playoffs. They did a very good job versus Tennessee of slowing down Derrick Henry and really making Tannehill beat them. And in the process, they beat the Titans. Against the Chiefs, they did a really good job of only really rushing 3 and rushing 3 at the quarterback and being able to put 8 in coverage. And they did a good job of mixing in different coverages that they typically had not played throughout the season, which is cover 6, cover 4, cover 1. Typically, they play a lot of cover 3, but last week they played a lot more man and a lot more match zone coverages as opposed to, some spot zones or some basic stuff, or just typically doing different things than what they usually do. Understanding that the Chiefs would have a good book on that, having played them already. So looking at their defense from last week, they were able to mold to attack the Chiefs' offense and what the offense does best to take that away, which is very important. So you look at that defense, and I think their defense will be willing to be game plan specific in the Super Bowl to specifically attack what the Rams don't do well, which is very important because we've seen a couple games already with the Rams on offense where I think one team they've played didn't do a good job of adjusting, and one team they played did a good job of adjusting. It just wasn't enough. So when you look at the divisional round, the Bucs didn't do a great job of adjusting to what the Rams struggle with. They didn't do a good job of adjusting their defense for what the Rams would struggle with. And what I mean by that is when it mattered, Todd Bowles blitzed Stafford, and we've seen Matthew Stafford has been the best quarterback versus the blitz this season. That is a big time thing. That is a real thing. If you watch the Rams, almost every time Stafford faces the blitz, he torches the blitz, especially in a big third down or a big fourth down or a big key situation. And that's what happened at the end of the game. That's what happened throughout that game. And that was a problem for the Bucs. A week later, the Niners did a much better job of defending the Rams when rushing 4 and dropping more people into coverage and trying to get pressure and trying to make Stafford hold on to the ball to rather make a bad decision with the ball or to take a sack or take a pressure and then be forced to make a bad play. So when you look at it from that structure standpoint of should you blitz or should you drop more people in coverage, from that standpoint, you definitely should be looking to play more coverage than being aggressive and blitzing the Rams because they have the answers for the blitz. They have the scheme. They have the screens. They have the quick passes. They have the ability to get in bunch formations and make it very hard on cornerbacks to play man-to-man. And they have all these crossing routes. So it's very hard for you to blitz them, and Stafford is smart enough to find the answers quickly and make that quick throw and that quick adjustments. So when you look at how Stafford fares versus different pressure looks, he is number 1 in the NFL versus the blitz at 5+ man rushers. He is actually number 24 in the NFL, which would be below average for sure, but probably bottom third, I guess you would call it, or bottom fourth. I'm not sure. I'm bad at math. Bottom fourth, I believe. So if you split it into eights, so bottom fourth, so a quarter. So bottom quarter of the league, he's number 24 versus 3-man pressures. So Stafford has looked pretty poor versus 3-man rush. And that is something that the Bengals did very, very well in the game versus the Chiefs, which was rush only 3 players. And that's something that a lot of teams don't do. It's because they don't think they can get pressure. It's because it's unconventional. Just in general, a lot of teams like to rush 4 or they like to blitz. So rushing 3 is something that is very rare, but the Bengals did at a high rate versus Kansas City, and that worked versus Kansas City to allow them to come back in the game. So for the Bengals, do they do that again, knowing that maybe it's a small sample size, but when Stafford faces more people in coverage, he's been genuinely weaker. On top of, Stafford doesn't have the mobility or the escapability of a Patrick Mahomes to find a lane and run. So you're not really worried about him running, but the one thing that it did trick Mahomes into doing is escaping the pocket and then running into pressure, which Stafford won't do. He'll take his time in the pocket and find a throw within the offense, and he's very good at outside of structure but within the pocket. And what I mean by that is he's very good at buying time within the pocket and waiting for a guy to break open, even if it's not the designed route. He did this a lot back in Detroit, often in big key situations, but I would tend to lean towards the Bengals mixing in some 4-man rush, mixing in some 3-man rush, maybe mixing in some different stunts and things to create some pressure, but never trying to actually blitz Stafford, but only giving the illusion that you're blitzing Stafford. That would be the way that I would attack them. So when looking deeper into this, the Bengals play zone without blitzing at the 7th highest rate. So this isn't too crazy for them to do. This is already something that they consistently do and have shown that they do, which is not blitz, but play a lot of zone and rush only 4. So that is the 7th highest rate in the NFL. And when looking at Stafford's number without blitzing versus zone coverage, he actually has more interceptions, 14, than he does touchdowns, 12. So as you can see, Stafford is a much worse quarterback in these situations when he's having to hold on to the ball because his first or second read isn't there, and he's having to find his third, fourth option, and he's having to move around the pocket to do so. That is where Stafford gets into trouble. So when it comes to the keys of this game plan, I think Logan Wilson at linebacker in coverage. I think whoever they decide to drop in as an extra coverage player is going to be key. Maybe that's an extra linebacker. And then on top of that, you've got Von Bell as that strong safety box player. But why these players are very important is because if you're going to play a lot of, let's say, 8 men in coverage or 7 men in coverage, obviously you might be a little bit weaker when it comes to defending the run. So Logan Wilson and Von Bell are 2 key players when stopping the run if the Rams decide to run versus these lighter boxes. Those players are going to have to make key plays, as well as Mike Hilton versus the run to keep those runs to a minimum yardage. So when you look at the Rams offense from an efficiency standpoint, they're really good in all plays and all down combinations. The only thing they're not very good at is on short yardage. They are very bad, actually, when it comes to 32nd running the ball on 3rd and 4th downs. So whenever they decide to run the ball on 3rd and 4th downs, it hasn't been very successful. Short yardage on 3rd and 4th down, they are 54%, which is 29th in the NFL. And actually, Cincinnati is also pretty bad in this area at 51%, which is even worse, 31st in the NFL. So both of these teams struggle to run the ball on short yardage, which might indicate that when it is short yardage, these teams put the ball in the hands of their quarterbacks more often than not. If you're looking at the Rams on how to attack the Bengals, I feel like the best way, we see the Bengals have been pretty good versus the run overall throughout the playoffs, specifically versus the Titans, but I thought they did a fairly good job versus the Chiefs as well. And it's specifically hard to run on them in the middle of the field because of DJ Reader and BJ Hill in the middle of the field. They're so big, they're so physical, they're tough to, especially for a smaller offensive line to deal with. So I think the Rams from the jump should be coming out early with probably a lot of play action and quick throws and potentially even, trying to hit a play or two over top. Now, if the Bengals are going to try to play more coverage, I think play action is a good way to be able to pick up some yards because you're trying to tease them into thinking you're running. So if those linebackers, even if they're dropping into coverage, test that ability to drop into coverage, test that, test the strength, I can't think of the word. Discipline. So the discipline of their ability to do that. So what play action makes you do is it step forward, right? Because you think there's a run coming. So if they step forward, it's like they're going to play the run even if they're playing back in coverage, and they're going to take that first step forward, which in turn allows you to get some plays behind those in the middle of the field defenders, which is where the Bengals have been a little bit weaker. You can definitely attack. I feel like Odell is going to have a big game here. You can definitely attack the Odell matchup, whether that's Chidobe Awuzie or Eli Apple. I think one-on-ones are going to be had with Odell Beckham Jr., and I could see him even leading this game in receiving yards, more so than even Cooper Kupp or Jamar Chase. I could see him getting upwards of 12 to 15 targets in this game because I do think the Bengals, if they're going to play more coverage, probably allows them to double-team Cooper Kupp in a lot of situations with Mike Hilton, who's a very solid nickel defender, and then maybe another zone, right? Maybe they play a lot of that cover one and they put that robber in the middle of the field to take away those Cooper Kupp option routes and crossing routes, which leaves Odell with a one-on-one matchup versus one of these corners that I think he has the advantage on. So Odell's a guy that could have a big game, and that's a matchup to exploit. Van Jefferson as well, if he can get open here. Tyler Higbee's somebody that's been beat up. I'm not quite sure if he's going to be good to go and ready to go, but if he's available, you'll certainly see him after the catch making plays, probably in the screen game where he's been pretty effective. And I think using Sony Michel as the late game runner would be my choice. If the Rams do take a lead in this game, I would be trusting Sony Michel with the ball. I would not be trusting Cam Akers. I would not be putting him on the field because I just think he's a liability to fumble the ball. And I overall just don't think he's looked very good throughout the playoffs. So personally, I would trust Sony to run the ball late in the game if I had a choice. Now, the Rams' running offense is very interesting because they have played two really good running defenses in the playoffs, which I think has changed our minds on how we feel about the Rams' offense. Now, throughout the season, they haven't been very good in terms of their rushing offense. They've been kind of weak, but they have shown a capacity to run the ball, like versus the Cardinals earlier in the playoffs. But versus the Bucs and versus the Niners, those are two top 10 run defenses and maybe top 5 run defenses. So it wasn't exactly easy for them to run the ball. And I don't think it's going to be easy for them to run the ball in this game either. But you could see a little bit of a mix, especially in the second half, which is something that I'm always really concerned with when watching the Rams and betting on the Rams is McVay gets very conservative very early, and it almost allowed Tom Brady to beat them because they just continuously ran the ball, and it wasn't working, and it's not the way to beat the Bucs. Now, they might get away with it a little bit better here, but you are also, again, you're playing Joe Burrow. He can come back in games. He showed that in the AFC Championship. So don't be too conservative if you do get that lead in the second half. Anything else when it comes to this offense? Do I have any other little things to say? But I feel like the Rams should have some success here running their typical offense and what they do, which is, you know, they're going to run it a little bit. They're going to try to stay balanced. They're going to get the ball out quick. The one formation that they've been really utilizing a lot in the playoffs, which is something that I think they'll utilize a lot in this game, is that Odell on the left or on the right, solo, and then they've got Kupp in the bunch formation with Van Jefferson and Tyler Higbee. That's something that you're going to see a lot of in this game to try to isolate Odell on one side and try to draw coverage to the bunch side with Cooper Kupp being in the bunch, and then finding different ways of getting good matchups with Cooper Kupp from that bunch and not allowing a defense to get a jam on him or hands on him early to be able to get open. So you're going to see Cooper Kupp be involved here, but I would heavily expect the Bengals as a game plan specific team to try to take him away. So I do think that Jefferson and Odell are going to have to come through and make some plays. And the only thing I would say about McVay is this isn't no longer Jared Goff. This is Matthew Stafford. You got Matthew Stafford for this exact reason. Put him out there, let him throw the ball. I think you should throw it early. You should throw it often. This is the way to attack the Bengals. And don't stop. Don't get conservative if you get the lead. Even if your defense is looking real good, Joe Burrow is the type of guy that will not go down without a fight. So keep playing your game well into the second half if you're up in the game. So that's the way I see it from the Bengals perspective. I really respect what Big Lou has been doing on the defense. I think the 3-man rushes are going to work in some capacity and could potentially, if the Bengals are going to win, it might be enough for them to get a couple of turnovers or a couple big key plays. I am just a little bit worried about the individual matchups in the game in terms of, I'm not sure other than Trey Hendrickson if anyone's going to be able to get a consistent pass rush on Stafford. I'm not sure if anyone will be able to cover Odell one-on-one. I'm not sure if they'll properly be able to come through and take away Cooper Kupp, but the Rams do definitely have the advantages in terms of just the individuals, but we've seen the Bengals defense play as a great unit And definitely, I think they've got a chance to slow down the Rams in this one if they can hold Stafford and make him hold the ball specifically is what I'm trying to say. So that side of the ball is interesting. Flipping it to the other side of the football, we've got the Bengals offense and the Rams defense. And I think this is the side of the football that most people are interested in. What's going on, Big Al? Thank you. He says, what's up, peeps? Gronk spiked the like button. Natasha also says, please remember to Gronk spike the like button. Appreciate it. Thank you guys for joining me live, by the way. So the Bengals offense and the Rams defense. So let's start with the defensive structure and what they like to do. So the Rams defense, okay? So the Rams defense is first in light boxes used in the NFL this season, which means they are going to sway to the side of defending the pass before they try to defend your run game. You've got to make them respect your run game before they actually put numbers to stop the run game. They use a lot of stunts up front with 4- and 5-man rushes. This is something that's very different from the Bengals. They do like to run 5-man pressures a pretty good amount, and that is highly influenced by Raheem Morris as the defensive coordinator. There is specifically one type of pass rush look that the Rams do love to utilize, which is like an overload, which is very unique to the Rams. Not a lot of other teams do this, but they like to put Aaron Donald and Von Miller on the same side with the nose tackle kind of on that same side. It usually is Gaines. And then a linebacker on the opposite side with Leonard Floyd on the opposite side. So at any given time, it makes an offensive line really have to compensate for one side of their offensive line. And my assumption would be the right side of the Bengals offensive line, because the Bengals offensive line on the right side is very, very weak. It is very, very weak. You've got two backups essentially playing on the right side for Cincinnati's offensive line. You've got Isaiah Prince, who took over for Riley Reiff, and you've got Carmen, the guard rookie who plays for the Bengals. They also have another guard in there who sometimes subs. I can't recall his name, but they've got a couple backups in there, level backups. That's what I'm trying to say. I don't know necessarily if you would call them backups, because I think at least the guard had been a rotation of starters, but they're backup level players is what I'm trying to say. And they're having to block Aaron Donald, they're having to block Von Miller, and they're having to block Gaines. So all on the same side. So what that's going to make the Bengals do, and if they don't do it, they're going to get smacked. If it's going to make the Bengals shift their protections towards one side of the formation. In turn, that can set up a variety of different pressures and 5-man and 6-man blitzes that the Bengals can really, or that the Rams can send at the Bengals, and potentially even get like a guy running free at the quarterback and getting a hit on Joe Burrow, because they're so worried about blocking Aaron Donald, they're so worried about Von Miller, that on the other side you can sneak a guy through or just have an easy rush at the quarterback, right? So that is the matchup to watch. The matchup everybody is talking about is that defensive line versus the Bengals offensive line. I think everybody that's talking about that is 100% correct. Last season, okay, we saw a game. It was the Bucs and the Chiefs, and we knew that the biggest mismatch in the game was the Bucs defensive line, their pass rush, versus the Chiefs offensive line. And a lot of people poo-pooed this. They said, this isn't going to matter because Mahomes, it doesn't matter with him. It doesn't matter with Andy Reid. They're going to scheme around it. They're going to find a way. And ultimately, it did not work. What they planned to do did not work, and it ruined the game for Kansas City to make it competitive. I still don't think they win, but it ruined it from being competitive, ultimately. So this is the game. If the Bengals can get the ball out quick, if they can protect well enough for Joe Burrow, which Joe Burrow is a soldier. He's going to sit back there. He's a warrior. He's going to take a hit to make a play. It's just, are some of those hits going to result in balls that float into the air and are picked off? Or are they going to result in too many sacks to overcome? Because there's a lot of things that pressure can really force fumbles. For example, Von Miller is a master at that. So that is the game, ultimately. If the Bengals can effectively move the ball through their short passing game and make some explosive plays, maybe when the Rams do blitz, that's where the Bengals can pull off the upset. That's where the Bengals can become dangerous, as we've seen versus other teams. But if the Rams are getting consistently home with 4-man rushes, it's going to be really challenging for any offense. We've even seen the greatest offenses in NFL history fail to succeed in Super Bowls because 4-man rush just ruined the game. So that's what you've got to look at. Now, for the rest of the Rams defensively, of course, another storyline is Jalen Ramsey versus Ja'Marr Chase. And I'm going to go back to what I said versus Tampa Bay. Jalen Ramsey rarely actually matches up on a wide receiver. Now, in that game, he matched up on Mike Evans more than he typically matches up on a wide receiver. And it did a good job for the most part. You know, it's funny to say that because Mike Evans had like a 70-yard touchdown or a 60-yard touchdown or something. But he also had 100 yards. But hey, for the most part of the game, it made the Bucs use their other weapons. It made Tom Brady go to other spots. And with an offense with Tom Brady's sake, you know, with Tyler Johnson and Scotty Miller and Cam Brate and Gio Bernard and Leonard Fournette, the Rams knew that they weren't going to lose if Mike Evans didn't have a good game. Even Gronk had a solid game. It just wasn't enough, ultimately, in the first half. It started to work at the end, but in the first half, it wasn't enough. And the difference here is Bengals got some pretty darn good receivers. What Joe Burrow is working with is a lot better than what Tom Brady was working with in the divisional round, right? It's not just Mike Evans. Okay, now you've got a Mike Evans, Ja'Marr Chase, but you've also got Chris Godwin, let's say, which is T. Higgins. You've also got the Antonio Brown, which is the Tyler Boyd, and that's what Brady didn't have in that divisional round, right? So you've got other receivers, and you've got Joe Mixon, who's got great hands and good route running ability out of the backfield. CJ Uzoma, who I expect is going to play in this game, at tight end. So you've got plenty of options to spread the ball around, and if the Rams get too aggressive and they blitz and they play man on the back end, which is most of the time when you blitz, you play man, they're going to have matchups across the board that are not Ja'Marr Chase, right? When you play man or you be aggressive versus the Bucs without all those other receivers, it's only really Mike Evans that can get open, right? Scotty Miller or Tyler Johnson are not going to make you pay, but T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd will. So that's a big difference in this matchup that they have yet to face, right? The Rams have not faced a passing attack with this amount of wealth in terms of their receiving core and their ability at the receiving core. So that is going to be certainly fascinating to watch. Now, I would expect Jalen Ramsey to be covering Ja'Marr Chase in a lot of key situations. Third downs, different distances, the 3rd and 8s, the 3rd and 10s, the 3rd and 12s. Expect to see Jalen Ramsey on Ja'Marr Chase. On top of that, I would expect to see Jalen Ramsey in certain formations that the Rams dictate that they think that the Bengals like to go to Ja'Marr Chase in this look. Then Jalen Ramsey will be on Ja'Marr Chase, right? And that's probably something where Jalen Ramsey will have to figure it out, and the defense will have to figure it out pre-snap where, okay, I'm going to be here. But the same thing can be said, and this is what Richard Sherman brought up on his podcast, which I think is very interesting, and him being a guy that's kind of like what Ramsey is in this defense, where he locks down wherever he is, but he's oftentimes a zone defender. So there's only so much you can do because the Rams are a team, they don't have great man-to-man ability. They don't have man cover corners across the board. Darius Williams has struggled. Their nickel corner isn't very good. Their safeties aren't very strong. Their linebackers can't really cover. So the Rams are very much built on Jalen Ramsey, and they're built on a scheme, and they're built on disguise, and they're built on a pass rush, right? So that's what they're built on, and they're very good at that. But that means that they're not very good at taking away one receiver because they don't have the wealth, right? They don't have the secondary number 2 corner, the number 3 corner, the number 4 corner to take away the number 2 receiver, the number 3 receiver. That's why, a team like New England in, let's say, 2019 was so good at man coverage, because not only did they have Gilmore, but they had J.C. Jackson, and they had Jonathan Jones, and they had Jason McCourty. So it allowed them to play man-to-man. The Rams, what Sherman was saying, if you're in cover 3, your assignment in cover 3 is to play one area of the field. And if the right call comes from the offense, you're not going to be able to cover it because that guy's going to be open versus that defense. You know what I mean? Because it's zone. So there's only so much a Ramsey can do, which is why I feel like they're going to put him, in the middle of the field at times. If they feel like Burrow's really getting the ball to Tyler Boyd over the middle a few plays here in this formation. They're going to put Ramsey in that spot. If they think that they're going to go to T. Higgins on this play, they're going to put Ramsey on the left or on the right? So it's kind of dependent on that, but in specific formations and downs and distances, you might see that matchup between Chase and Ramsey. Now, back to the blitzing. Neither team should blitz. Now, I talked about that with the Bengals, but I also believe that with the Rams. And the reason I believe that with the Rams is because that the Rams are very, very good at rushing teams with 4 players. They're very good. They're the best team in the NFL this season when rushing with only 4. I wonder why. But then you look at a Bengals offensive line that they can't block you. I don't care how many you send. You could at times send 3, right? You could take the Bengals game plan from them and just replicate it, and you have probably more success because you've got a guy named Von Miller. You've got a guy named Aaron Donald. You've got Leonard Floyd. Like, you've got studs that can't be blocked when they run 4, when you rush 4, when you rush 3 even. At times you're going to get pressure because of how good these guys are, right? And that is the thing that scares me a little bit with the Rams is Raheem Morris likes those 5-man rushes, which what does 5 men do? Well, it takes an extra guy out of coverage. So that's going to allow Burrow maybe a quicker throw, right? I would rather go on the side of let's put 4-man rush. Let's make Burrow hold the ball for a split second for our pass rush to get there. And if the Rams are smart, what they'll do is they'll look back at the Titans game and they'll see a 4-man rush that was a lot of stunts, but it was always really 4 guys. And Mike Vrabel designed a great game plan to disrupting the pocket, sacking Joe Burrow, and making him hold it for just an extra second for his defender to get there and to get that sack, right? So the blitz for Burrow has been very good too, because Burrow can read a defense very fast. And when you've got really good receivers that separate quickly, you're going to be able to get to Tyler Boyd or T. Higgins. Let's say Ramsey's on Chase. Okay, he's over there on the right. Well, we've got Tyler Boyd versus your nickel corner who sucks. We've got T. Higgins versus Darius Williams. He has a 5-inch advantage on him. He has a 6-inch advantage. Just throw him the ball down the left sideline for 40 yards. Like, let's see if that works. So that's where I think the Rams are a liability there, and they should probably go more towards a lot of different 4-man stunts and things and take that Titans game plan and try to replicate it. Now, how do the Bengals attack this? Well, the Rams, they haven't been very good at defending the middle of the field. The Rams have ranked 29th in DVOA against passes in the short middle of the field. That includes the postseason. The Bengals rank 7th in offensive DVOA on passes in the short middle of the field. Now, when you think about it, the Rams' middle of the field defenders are not very strong. Nick Scott, Trevon, or I don't know how to say his name, Howard, Troy Reeder, Eric Weddle, who came off the street. Like, these guys are not the strongest defenders in the world, and they're having to be relied on in space versus, so this is why I could see, Tyler Boyd and Joe Mixon getting some quick, easy completions in this game. I also think T. Higgins has an ability here to have a really good game to win his matchup versus Darius Williams, because I think physically it's a mismatch. I think he's too big, and Williams has just genuinely struggled throughout the playoffs and throughout the season. He just hasn't had a very good year as opposed to last year where he had a really good season. So, but I could see the Bengals trying to go quick game. I could see the Bengals trying to run the ball more than the Rams. I at least think they should run the ball more than the Rams, but I don't necessarily think it should come on first down. I think second down, third down, even, and I do think that the Bengals should be committed to going for fourth downs. If they're in a 4th and 4, I don't mind going for it. Let's say you're in a 3rd and 8. And you run the ball for 5 yards versus their crazy overload blitz, and you run the ball, say they're trying to overload the right, run the ball back to the left versus that look, try to get 5 yards on 3rd down, and then be able to move the ball, maybe go for it on 4th down. I think the key for the Bengals, whether you run it or you throw it, and I think maintaining balance is totally fine here in this matchup, but I think the Bengals just need to be aware of the down and distance. the Bengals are consistently getting in these third downs where their offensive line will be exposed, kind of like that Titans game, they're going to be in trouble because Tannehill, like the Titans would have won that game if they had an offense like the Rams. Let's just put it that way. So that's really the key. So I could see the Bengals mixing in the run more than the Rams. I believe they should, but I think that they should really be just trying to protect themselves from those third down and potential situations where it's going to be scary versus Von Miller and Aaron Donald and company. So that's how I see it. Now, what else do I got here? I'm not sure what's going on with the tight ends. I think CJ Uzomah is going to play, given what he said. I'm not sure about Tyler Higbee, but both those players could be pretty key on both sides of the ball in terms of the screen game, in terms of yards after catch, in terms of over the middle of the field for sure, especially for Uzomah versus the Rams. And then, what else do I got? Oh yeah, this one was very, very interesting, this stat that I took from Warren Sharp. And Joe Burrow has actually only played one game this entire season versus a top 10 passing defense, which is crazy to me because he's played 3 games in the playoffs. So that's insane. Tom Brady played 9 games versus top 10 passing defenses. So he played 9 out of the top 10. Stafford has played 7. So Joe Burrow has rarely faced a passing defense that ranks this highly. And the only other team that they did play was the Tennessee Titans, who had 9 sacks. So in the games also that they've played these style of defenses, like I guess you would categorize this as a Vic Fangio style defense. They are 1-3 in those games this season. And they weren't big Jamar Chase games either. So those were some interesting stats that I found. I was actually shocked to hear that Joe Burrow only played 1 top 10 passing defense the whole year, which is definitely something that has helped my prediction for this game. The Bengals have ranked 30th in pass block win rate, 31st in adjusted sack rate, but they're only 14th in pressure. And like I said, a lot of that has to do with Joe Burrow will try to hold the ball to make a play. And sometimes it's going to work, and sometimes it's not going to work. So if you're the Rams, you want to make him hold the ball by not blitzing and trying to lend towards that weakness by not blitzing. I think it's easier to expose a bad offensive line if you don't blitz than if you do blitz, because that is really where you play your strength versus their weakness, like the Bucs did versus the Chiefs last year. Okay. So that is the breakdown for the game, guys. I did have some nice graphics that I never really brought up here, so I'm just going to show you them for fun. But we've got the tail of the tape if you guys were interested. Clearly, the Rams are the superior side in terms of their strength throughout the season. 8th on offense, 5th on defense, 4th in net yards per play, 4th in points per drive, and they win all of those categories. Now, the Bengals have been significantly better offensively and defensively throughout the playoffs, and they are an underdog team, which is why they are. I don't remember the last time, actually, the Super Bowl was this wide in terms of a 4-point spread. Does feel like a lot in terms of the Super Bowl. Now, looking at both sides, the Rams, their weaknesses here, 12th in rush DVOA would be their weakness offensively. Really nowhere else. Passing has been good. Success rate is strong. Points per drive is strong. And then defensively, pressure rate is actually surprising given how good they've been. But down the stretch, that is where it's been turned on. And we've seen this a lot in the past with defenses, I feel like. Like with the Bucs last year, the Giants in the Super Bowl past, the Colts even with Peyton Manning back in the day. But I feel like a lot of defenses, pass rush is a very like, how would you put it? Pass rush is a very inconsistent thing, but it seems to be consistent lately. So my score for this game is going to be 27-20 for the Los Angeles Rams. Now, I'm going to say this. I initially was going to predict a Rams blowout. I really was. And I just couldn't because I have too much respect for the Bengals and what they've done this postseason. I have too much respect for Joe Burrow, how he's playing, his mentality, this team and their heart. I just feel like I couldn't do it to Bengals fans. I couldn't do it to the Bengals. I didn't have the balls to actually say that the Rams would blow them out. If either team blows the other out, I do think it would be the Rams. There's just decisive advantages that they have, like their pass rush. And being that this is probably the strongest pass defense they've played all season, that is certainly something. On top of a balanced team that has a very good passing game and a running game. So I think the Rams should win this game. Would I be shocked if the Bengals win this game? No, because I think if it becomes a close game where the Bengals, or where the Bengals hang around, they make enough big plays through their passing game, and the Rams we've seen them get tight and conservative, and we've seen that McVay will become conservative and run the ball, and they'll kind of sit on a lead, which I'm not a huge fan of. So I think that the Rams should come away with the win. I think they're the better team. I think they are the better defense. I think this is Stafford's moment to shine. I think Odell Beckham's going to have a massive game, and I think they are the best team. Now, I thought, before the season, it's funny because these are two teams that I completely got on the opposite side of the spectrum. So for the Rams, I had the Rams really was going to be my second Super Bowl pick. If I didn't pick Tampa Bay, it was going to be the Rams. And ultimately, that's kind of what happened this season. Was the Bucs kind of got very hurt, and the Rams filled the void, and they beat the Bucs out, and then they ended up replacing them and probably ultimately, in my opinion, winning the Super Bowl. And I've got them covering here. And I would advise you that just pick the winner and then decide on the spread based on that. If you think the Rams are going to win, I think it's risky business here, taking the 4 points with Cincinnati. That's just my personal opinion. Trying to thread that needle, I think, is challenging. So I would just advise to play the money line on Cincinnati if you think they're going to win. That's just me. But yeah, I've got the Rams 27-20 because I have too much respect for what the Bengals have been doing, but I do think the Rams are the superior side and they should come away with the win. I think the familiarity of Sean McVay with Zach Taylor certainly helps. And I think Sean McVay, learning from his experience and just the general thing of the Rams, there's a different sense of urgency here. I understand that the Bengals, they're in the Super Bowl. They want to win the Super Bowl. Don't get me wrong. I get it. But the Rams' urgency to win this game, they have a lot of players that understand what it means to get here and not win. They have a lot of veteran players that really want to win this game. I know this is not a football thing. This is a human thing. But Aaron Donald has gone his whole career without a Super Bowl. He's experienced a Super Bowl defeat. Sean McVay is experienced a Super Bowl failure. Matthew Stafford has experienced many seasons of not winning and then ultimately getting here. Odell Beckham Jr. has experienced multiple years of him being heavily criticized, and now he's gotten here and he can define himself in a new way. Cooper Kupp, right? That year that they went to Super Bowl, he was actually hurt. Andrew Whitworth, final season in the NFL, can hang him up with a Super Bowl. You've got Eric Weddle. You've got so many players, and Jalen Ramsey, that it just means the world to them that they win this game. It's kind of like Tampa Bay last year. You had the Ndamukong Suhs. You had the Levante Davids. You had the Mike Evans, right? The Chiefs just came off that Super Bowl, and the Chiefs were kind of young. The Chiefs were kind of that way. The Bengals are that way. I think the Bengals are very happy. They want to win the game. Don't get me wrong. Joe Burrow is going to go out there and put on a performance, and he's going to try. They're going to fight. But there's a different level of just intensity that you bring to a game that you know how much it means. And I've heard Tom Brady say it many times. He kind of early in his career took for granted all the wins. So then once he got there later in his career, he understood what it meant. He understood how hard it was to get there and to win. And that ultimately gave him an edge in a lot of the later Super Bowls because that is how much it meant. So that's something that I definitely take into account here with this matchup. But I do think the better team wins, and I do think the better team, in my opinion, is the Rams. So that is my breakdown for Super Bowl 56. Let me know yours in the comment section below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Again, go check out the rest of my Super Bowl content, guys. The rest of the week, I'm going to have a lot of different videos coming out. I'm going to tease you right now, and don't leave yet. I've got a few more things to say. Okay. Saturday night or Saturday at some point, I'm going to be doing a live pre-game show for Super Bowl 56, and we're going to have some fun with it. I'm going to break down some X factors, some matchups, and then I'm going to talk about, the halftime show, my favorite songs that they're going to play, and we're going to have some fun with the Super Bowl experience and have a pregame show, and you guys can ask me questions. We'll have a bit of a fun Q&A there as well, so definitely tune in for that on Saturday night. And the final thing that I want to say is please go check out my guys at Underdog Fantasy. We've got the link in the description. Use the code BLV. Right now, they're running a very cool special for the Super Bowl, actually. So if you use the code BLV, they'll match you up to $100. So you put $100 in, use the code BLV, you get $100 back. That's $200 in your account. And right now, they're going to give you a free opportunity, basically, with Joe Burrow to be involved in your pick'em. And I love what they did with the picture for Joe Burrow, by the way. Joe Burrow, all you got to do is pick over or under 1 passing yard in the game, and you can use Joe Burrow over or under 1 passing yard. Obviously, you're going to go with over there, and you can include him in a pick'em of your choice. So make sure to check out Underdog Fantasy, guys. The link is in the description. Use the code BLV when you do sign up. It's my favorite place to play fantasy, and I'm going to be doing a bunch of pick'ems throughout the Super Bowl experience, and I'll probably even include a couple of them in my best bets, which will be out tomorrow. Thank you guys for watching. It's Mitch of the Bottom Line View. We will see you tomorrow for best bets. Make sure to spike that like button, and we will see you soon. Peace.